Dave and Mark are.
Okay. So some of you have been on training, only a few of you that we do typically at the end of the year called No Guts, No Gain. And No Guts, No Gain is 16 traits of successful people and 21 barriers to success. And one of those barriers to success that they go over is that successful people, they make a list of things that hold them back and then they work on them. And so I've expanded a little bit in this training and did a little bit more research to put this together. Or what are some of the beliefs that hold salespeople back specifically? So that's what this session is about. And what at the end, the last slide, I'll just tell you, it's kind of like when we do the upfront contract, how we want this to finish. The last slide is basically, hey, make a list of things that you think that are holding you back. Think about the ones that you can control and you can do something about and what you can do, and don't worry about the ones that you can't do something about. One of the 49 Sandler rules was worry is borrowed trouble. So the idea of this is that sometimes you can control things, but if there's something holding you back, and let me give you an example that I've shared with some of you. When I first started working out of my home, I was working for my alma mater, Bradley University. I was in Chicago as a Chicago area campaign director, and it was the first time that I actually did not have to go into office and I had to work from home. And what was difficult for my wife to understand, she had a job and she'd get up in the morning and she'd say, "So, what do you got going on today?" And I'd say, "Well, I don't have anything until noon." And she'd, "Great. Can you take the dog to the groomer? Can you stay home for the cable guy?" And the honeydew list came out because she thought that, well, since you're not going anywhere, you're not really working. And what was holding me back was sometimes it was just trying to get used to be able to work from home by myself and have the discipline to get up, go to work, get dressed, don't wear my pajamas. Some salespeople, you get up, they're working at home, oh, you know what, everybody just got in the office. I'll wait. And, oh, it's 10 o'clock. They're probably having a coffee break. I'll wait. Oh, gee, it's noon. They're probably going to lunch. I'll wait until after lunch. And they can't control the things that you need to control when you work from home. So the point of the story is I made a list of the things that were holding me back. And one of them was just being able to have and not do the honeydew list. So some of you have heard the story. I would actually get up in the morning and I'd leave before my wife did, and I'd drive down to a restaurant just down the street called Seven Dwarfs Restaurant. I'd sit in the corner window, have a cup of coffee, and I'd wait for my wife to drive by so that she's on her way to work, and then I'd go back home and be able to work without having a honeydew list. Now she knows that story now, but the idea is make a list of things that are holding you back. But what holds a lot of people back, it depends on who you ask. So for example, if you really ask the salespeople, hey, what's holding you back? Here's number one. Number one thing that says salespeople that hold them back from achieving their goals is unclear performance goals. So giving a rep a quota is not necessarily just enough because it really doesn't account for the actions and the behaviors. And I talk a lot about behaviors that they must take. True performers really measure their actions as well as a whole host of other data in order to not only keep sales on track, but to give them the insights they need. So the point of this slide is you cannot manage numbers. You can only manage the behaviors that you need to do to achieve those numbers. So what I mean by that is salespeople say, well, they gave me my goal. I'm supposed to do 100,000. We used to call it AV, annualized volume. Yes, my goal is to do 100,000 in annualized volume, AV sales. Okay, yeah, and one of the reasons I was this terrible manager at my weekly meetings, I'd go around the room and say, so what did you hit your number? Did you do your number? Bob, you hit yours. Why can't you guys be like Bob? And the meetings turned into all about managing numbers instead about having a conversation about the behaviors that are necessary to get there. So I have a sales rep working for me now, Kylie. Kylie is just new. She's 3 weeks into the business. And all we've been working on is what behaviors are necessary for her to achieve 15 appointments. We know that if she achieves 15 appointments, she'll rule out and disqualify 5 of those people. And out of the 10 that are left, she'll sell another 10. But the numbers aren't as important as what she has to do to achieve that behavior. How many networking events she has to go to, how many mailers does she have to do, how many contacts does she have to have, all the behaviors. So a lot of times sales reps are saying, what holds me back is I'm confused about the behaviors. Yes, I know the numbers, but I don't know the behaviors. So ask yourself that. Have you really done a good job of measuring the behaviors that you need to do? And are you held back by having unclear goals that are more behavior related than number related? That's number one. Number two, reps say there's no room for creativity. And think about it. If your job was just to push a button every day, 100 times a day, and you have no creativity around you, how long would you want to have that job? So most of you are too young to understand how the evolution of the auto industry happened in the 60s and 70s when Toyota came into this country and into this market. Toyota, from their Japanese culture, what they found was they needed to do, they were the first ones that did job rotation. They would allow people to work on one area for 2 hours and then switch, and everybody learned something down the assembly line, but they constantly rotated. And that worked for a while so that people had a little bit of creativity and some changes. Then what they started to do is bring in committee groups, and they would have more of their daily huddle, and they would have conversations with people about how they felt they could improve the assembly line. So think about it, is what's holding you back is you just don't feel like there's any creativity, that every day you're doing the same thing. You're getting up, you're making your 20 phone calls, you're driving, you're doing the same thing. Most salespeople get into sales because they like the freedom and opportunity the job gives them of not being stuck in a cubicle for 40 hours. They get to get out. But also, what are you being creative about? Are you being creative about your prospecting? Are you being creative about your own marketing activities? Have a little bit of creativity in what it is that you do. And it goes back to slide number one. What's the creativity that you can interject into the behaviors you need to achieve the numbers? So start stacking those behaviors, and having that creativity helps move you forward. 3, they say overly structured and bureaucratic culture. Many people don't want somebody else holding them accountable for the right behaviors. We talk about critical parent, you know what you need to do. You need to clean your room, you need to do your homework. And we carry that baggage with us into adulthood, that we just don't like somebody else holding us accountable for behaviors. But we need structure ourselves. Everybody needs structure. And if we can't provide it for ourselves, it is necessary for others to assist us. So on this slide, I want to remind you, and I don't know if any of you have done it, but sometimes it's great to have an accountability partner. It was one of the core things that helped me. If without having the accountability partners I have when I started my franchise in 2007 doing sales training, I would not have made it, because the organization, everybody started your franchise, they said, get an accountability partner, somebody who doesn't have real superiority control over you, not your wife, not a brother, not a family member, somebody who might be on the same par level with you, that can hold you accountable for the behavior that you should be doing, but not really can dictate to you or scold you if you don't. So Rochelle Carrington and Troy, another guy in Ohio, Rochelle is in New York, Troy is in Ohio, myself, we started our accountability group. And every Wednesday at 4:00, I've had this for over 15 years. Rochelle and I still meet. Troy dropped out, but we still have a call. And what we do is each week we say, hey, I want to be held accountable for this behavior. I want to really focus this week on making sure I do upfront contracts. And I want to make sure that I make my 20 cold calls. And Rochelle would say, boy, I want to be held accountable for doing networking. I hate networking. And what happens is, at the beginning of an accountability group, you'll sit there and lie to the person about, oh yeah, I did what I was supposed to do. And after a while, you'll sit there and think, well, why am I lying to this person? They have no authority over me. But you want to be able to report that you did it. So each week we would hold each other accountable for certain behaviors that we want. And then we'd call. And the thing would be, I'd want to get my behaviors done. So when Rochelle said, hey, did you do this, this, and this? I go, yeah, I did. Did you do what you were supposed to do? And having an accountability group was just great to try and be held accountable for the behavior. And we talked about the behaviors each week that we should do. So instead of thinking about this structure that the company might have provided for you and reporting this and doing that, try and find an accountability partner, somebody that you can have a 15-minute conversation each week just to talk about the behaviors that you want to be held accountable for, and then hold them accountable for the behaviors. So that might be holding people back as they get bogged down by the accountability to write somebody else. Well, now here's your chance to hold somebody else accountable, and it's a a trade-off. Does anybody have an accountability partner? I'm just curious. Did anybody take part? So accountability partner can be somebody from church, high school or college buddy, anybody that also just you have a conversation. Hey, each week I just want to have a conversation to hold each other accountable for the behavior. And again, each week we say what we're going to do. So I would recommend you try and find somebody. Just sometimes it's almost that psychological advantage to have somebody else that you can talk to that isn't in your company, that isn't your spouse, that isn't somebody that's going to dictate to you, well, you ought to do this and do it this way. Accountability partners, it's the nice because you're holding both accountable for the behavior. Highly recommend it. Helps stop from being held back by all the resentment we get typically when somebody else is trying to hold us accountable for behavior. 4, low value tax. And what we're saying here is things like just entering data. Sometimes, most salespeople hate entering data and filling out, what's going on as far as in their, what do you guys use? Keyed in, like entering, that's what I was looking for. Sometimes that holds people back that I just get so frustrated that I have to sit here. I'd rather be out selling, but I got to hold it in. The key here is that really high performing reps, when I'm talking, I use the word professional sales reps, really love it and they embrace technology and they look at technology as how this can save me time and make my life easier, as opposed to one more task that holds me back from doing the behaviors that I want. If you think about keyed in, about how it can help you in the future for the information that you put into it, and like 2 months later somebody calls you and you're able to go back to keyed in, look at the technology that you have not as a weight, not as an anchor, not as an antlet that's holding you back. Look at it as a tool that you haven't learned how to use properly to save you time. So that's one of the things that a lot of, when they did this survey, and this was done by a group called the Aberdeen Group, it's a marketing group that surveyed salespeople and comes up with this data, some of these things that I look at. So other beliefs that hold salespeople back are salespeople, I don't have the right personality for sales. This is a common one where, especially among those who believe that they have, they don't have the ability to talk to people. But the truth is, there is no real template, if you will, for what personality fits in sales. A lot of people think that they have to hire that quick talking flim plan. And when we talk about DISC styles, and we talk about, people are asking me, hey, should I hire this person? Here's his DISC profile. Boy, this person's an high I, really outgoing. Boy, this person's a D, they're too demanding and they're too tough. Or this person's a C, they're too compliant, they follow rules, they're too detail oriented. The best salespeople are typically usually an S. S are calm, laid back. S style people ask more questions. They do a really good job of listening. And the thing about it is, anybody can be an S. It's really hard sometimes to stretch and be a D if that's not natural to your style, or to be a C like me, it's not natural to my style, or to be a high I. But almost everybody can concentrate and be an S, because all an S is, remember, they're laid back, they're a little bit more calm, they listen more than they talk. And so that's not necessarily the right personality, but that is the behavior that you should be looking for, is thinking about when you meet with somebody on the playing field for the first time, treat everybody as if they're an S, because S style people are the most forgiving and you can move somewhere. If you started out treating everybody like a D, you're going to offend some people. So start with an S. That's really the right type of behaviors one has to have to be successful. Sometimes we get this head trash. This is head trash. The prospect will never pay for this. I shall give you an example. When I started as a student in training with Standler back in the 90s, my coach was Terry Slattery out of Minneapolis, and I was in Chicago at the time. And Terry charged me $250 a week at that time to be in the training class. And okay, I figured that, for a couple of weeks I would do that and, steal all of his free thing. And after a couple of weeks, I'd be fixed and I wouldn't need to pay him anymore. And then when I got into being a trainer myself, and they said, oh, gee, you need to charge $12,000 a year for President's Club. I thought, well, nobody's ever going to pay that kind of money. Rochelle, my accountability partner in New York, charges $18,000. And she said to me, I said, Wisconsin people aren't going to pay that kind of money. And she said, that's your own head trash, that you wouldn't pay for it. So you think other people wouldn't do it. And that's sometimes what salespeople do is they get this head trash about how much something costs, your sign costs, a message center, and we think that, boy, the client will never pay for it. We get to stop this limiting belief because it can hold you back because it stops you from making a sale before the deal even happens. So this head trash that one has about money can hold you back. So think about if that has ever done that. You know that the price or you believe the price that you have to quote to somebody is going to be out of the budget, so you don't even get into the proper sales mode. So I don't know, Brian, has that ever happened that sales guys come to you and say, oh, we need to lower this price, we're never going to get this, before they even have pitched the first full price at the full margin? Does that ever help them, Brian, or not? Am I off track on that?
Oh, no, it happens. And I think part of what we're trying to do through all these sales techniques, and John and I actually were discussing it yesterday on the way back. It's like taking our 7 pillars that we have as a business that we've outlined and doing the sales techniques and creating the value on the front end to eliminate that head trash so that the client is thinking more of what you're doing as a company to help them with their whatever that issue may be that involves their signage. And not sit there and get hung up and worrying about a price, because if I've come at it from a value standpoint and then the price is not as much of an issue anymore because the customer's realizing what you're going to do. So it's on us as sales to come at it that way. And that helps limit that head trash of worrying about price. And then ultimately, if somebody is just about price, then that says that we're not a fit. So I think it does happen a lot.
Okay.
And I think it's something we all have to fight through and try to stay on task with what we're supposed to be doing as far as our sales techniques, and that'll help overcome that.
Yeah, you used the right word, and I used it earlier, head trash. We have head trash about money, about what a client will and will not spend. So that holds us back sometimes. I have another rep that's trying to sell Georgia Pacific, and to be able to do the sale to them, it's going to cost about $100,000 to sell. Oh gosh, that's a lot of money. They'd never go for that. Really? Had you presented to them? You had a conversation. You can't control somebody's pocketbook. We know that, but you also shouldn't interject and believe what that pocketbook is limited to. Make sure that you don't have that head trash about, I wouldn't buy it, so boy, why would they pay that kind of money?
I just had that recently. It was a vinyl job and it was over $60,000. And I thought to myself, I would never pay $60,000 for a vinyl job. So I really thought the client was going to shoot it down, and they didn't think it was a big deal at all.
And did you guys get that one?
Not yet, but
in the process. I appreciate you saying that. I think that's happened a lot where it holds us back as our own limiting beliefs. The other thing is I can't handle rejection. The number one question I've been asked since I've been a sales trainer is, can I teach anybody to be can anybody be a salesperson, or do you have to be naturally born? You all maybe somebody say, oh, you're a natural born salesperson. My answer is I can teach anybody our 7 steps. I can teach anybody techniques. What I can't teach is whether somebody can handle rejection or not. I think what happens is the salespeople, when we get rejected, we take it personally. instead of thinking about, well, they rejected it because they couldn't afford it. They rejected it because the timing wasn't right, whatever. Stop taking the rejection personally. That's, learn how to deal with rejection. That's, I mean, if I'm hiring somebody, that's what I'm interviewing for and saying, tell me about when you were rejected. I just hired a person from Microsoft yesterday. Microsoft laid off about 80 people, and I'm interviewing this person. I said, tell me about a time that you were rejected by a client that was interested in buying your product. He did a really good job of talking to me about a time that a college down in Plano, Texas, that he was trying to sell rejected him after about a long enterprise sale, 6-month cycle, working several trips down there. And at the end, he got rejected. And I asked him, how did you handle that rejection? And he said, I moved on to the next one. I went down to Texas A&M. And that made me feel really good about hiring because the rejection didn't hold him back. Rejection is a part of sales, and without it, you wouldn't be paid nearly as well as we do. We are getting paid for the nose because we can do what other people can't do, and that's deal with rejection. Remember what I said, in our society, we do not get paid on our value to society. Otherwise, teachers, firemen, policemen would get a lot more money than NFL football players. We get paid in our society of our ability to do a job that others can't do or won't do. And in sales, it's not that a lot of people can't do what we do, it's that they won't because they don't want to have to deal with rejection. So do not worry about rejection. They're not rejecting you personally. They're rejecting perhaps that you weren't able to solve their problem at a price they could afford. Do not allow that to get into your psychic and your head trash again. Sometimes salespeople, I'll never get any better at this, or I don't need to get any better. I added that to the Aberdeen because when we talk about the sales training that you guys are going through, most of you have been in sales obviously before, and you've had success in sales. And so what happens is sales people sometimes when they go through any type of a new systematic step of selling, like whether it's Sandler, whether it's the step up system, whether it's Zig Ziglar, Tony Robbins, any of those, Socratic selling, any of the system, the idea is people think, well, I've had limited success previously. I don't need to learn this new tactic. I don't need to learn this new system. Or I'll never get better with this system. Sometimes I get that from some people who go, oh my God, there's so much content. There's so much here. I'll never get better at it. What one needs to understand is that one of the reasons that we're doing this training as a group is so that Brian and Bren only have to manage one system instead of having 8 different salespeople and everybody have their own systematic approach and Brian and Bren have to adapt to them. The idea is the company's following a systematic approach that's uniform, that can be replicated. When new people come on, like Patrick or John, it can be replicated. So one can get better at this, but it does take time. I'm surprised nobody in the new group has asked me, how long does it take it before you get this? Remember last week for the guys that were new, I did a slide, there's a couple of steps here. Know the system, believe the system, and then do it. And a lot of people say, well, how long does it take before this is just part of my vernacular that I do it automatically? Typically, it takes about 8 months. That if somebody's really working this, concentrating, practicing, it takes about 8 months to switch from what you've been taught, benefits and feature selling, to really become versed at pain selling. So we almost put it on a bell curve where we see reps that start doing the system, they start seeing it, they try some of the techniques, they start to believe, boy, this actually worked, close the deal or close the file, and they get really good at about 8 months into it. And then they start thinking, oh, I don't need to learn anything else, I've got it. And what happens is their sales plateau, and even some of them after a little while, they go back to benefits and features and the sales dip. You are always getting better at sales, whether it's be my techniques that we teach you, whether it's seeing things that you see on the internet. You can always continue to learn, take a lot of the techniques that we get here, apply the ones that do fit, garbage in, garbage out, the ones that you don't think fit with your style, your personality. I'm okay with that, as long as you're following a systematic approach to an end result. That's really what a sales system is. Remember, there's a start and finish to everything. And following a sales systematic approach helps you get to that end result faster. And whether that end result is a no, that's okay too. Obviously, we want yeses, but you will continue to get better if you try new things and keep working on it. Some salespeople say, boy, I can't see myself doing this so long, so why bother? What I mean by that is some people are thinking, well, I'm only in sales because I just fell into it. It wasn't something I thought about. My real career is I want to start my own business. Boy, I hate this cold calling. I just started. I don't have a pipeline full of leads. Just remember this, just for now, not forever. And what I mean by that is some of the behaviors that you're doing early in your career with with Graphic House, you have to think about which ones are really going to be in the future. Once you build that pipeline up, maybe you don't have to do as many cold calls. Maybe now you're getting a lot of referrals before you built up that pipeline. So the reason you bother is because things constantly change. And once you do the behaviors necessary to achieve the results you want, it continues to get easy. It's not as hard anymore. So just remember this line, just for now, not forever. And where that came from is when I first started and they told me, hey, you're going to have to do about 100 cold calls a day. And I said, wait a second, I just paid $100,000 to buy a franchise, and now I got to go back to what I was doing, 10 years ago. I feel like I'm going backwards, not forward. And Bill Art, my coach, says, remember, Wayne, those cold calls are just for now, not forever. This isn't the thing you're going to do always. It's just something you have to do at the beginning. So think about the behaviors you don't like doing, but if you continue to do them and you build your pipeline, you won't have to do them forever. Last part of this when we get into is what also holds us back is some messages from childhood. So remember things that you've heard. Remember you were taught, don't talk to strangers, which you have to do in sales. Don't take money from strangers, something you have to do in sales. Don't ask so many questions. Children should be seen, not heard. The average toddler hears no 400 times a day. Now that seems like a lot, but remember, usually the parent says it 3 times. No, 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 no. We hear no a lot. So what happens is we're afraid to go for the no because constantly in your life as a child, you heard it. And so you resent people who tell you no. But remember, going for the no is one of the best things you can do early in the process. Hey, can you think of any reason why you tell me no? And if you told me no, give me an idea what it's like. So remember, that's negative versus positive language, which should be alternatives to no. You shouldn't tell the prospect no either. Remember, prospects don't want to hear no. So like no running, it would be changed to walk, please, no throwing, put it on the floor gently, no shouting. These are all things that teachers are being taught basically in kindergarten and first grade to try and do things more nurturing. I mean, it's not necessarily saying that everything the teacher does doesn't have some type of a little bit more critical parent in it, but just how to word things differently that doesn't sound like a no. Remember with us, different is better than better. So what can you say or do that makes you different? And that is one thing, recognizing psychological scripts that we have, reflecting their needs, desires, or biases and defense mechanisms. So the best salespeople are obviously amateur psychologists. I don't know if you read the book, some of you remember the quote they said, is that sales is a Broadway play put on by a psychiatrist. Because you're trying to figure out who is this person? How do they process information? This is a 7-act play. You're the director in the 7-act play. Sometimes you have to rehearse your lines with the actors. So there are scripts that all of us have, sometimes from childhood, and the buyers are prisoners of their own scripts sometimes too, taught by their mom. So messages instead of saying to somebody, oh, you don't want to buy that, you would say, any issues you see with that? Or, boy, I can't match that price. Can't believe they must be doing something wrong. Suppose I couldn't match that price. Any reason you still would go with Graphic House? That's a bad idea, you might tell a prospect. If I saw some issues with that idea, would you want to hear about them? These are different ways of laying down gently. We talked about sales judo, how to gently lay down a client, a prospect, without telling them no. people hate to hear the word no. So what can you say in a more nurturing manner? So these are just some examples of that. And in the bonding rapport step, remember the message that you had was go make friends, but the message they had was don't trust strangers. So remember, you're already in an adversarial position right now. Never speak about yourself. It's called bragging, where the prospect's thinking, get to the point. That's why this one right here, the second part here, when we talk about benefits and features, most salespeople are out there and they have taught, hey, here are 7 bullet points, then go convince this person that they need our features. What happens is the prospect is waiting for you to get to the point. I don't want to hear about all the benefits and features. Get to the point. Anybody remember, number one, what do prospects want? Anybody remember what they want? Number one thing they want is solutions to their pain. That's what they want. They want to hear solutions to their problem. Get to the point. And the reason I'm spending more time on this point right here is this. This is what your upfront contract does. Your upfront contract helps that issue where the clients get to the point. What's your price? What's it going to cost me? The upfront contract helps them understand that you're not ready to give them a price, not ready, that getting to the point, it's going to take a while because I need to ask you some questions. So your upfront contract helps get rid of some of these messages that they have in their head, and they know where you're going. How many times have you met with a salesperson who just starts getting into his pitch and you're thinking, yeah, how do I just get to the point? If he told you what his process was, maybe now you'd give them a little bit more leeway and let them go through it. So that's what your upfront contract is. You were taught mind your manners. They were taught be quiet. It's best to keep silent. So sometimes they're holding back. Remember, first step in their system is to misrepresent or not feel like they have to tell you exactly what their pain is. You're taught be humble and modest. They're taught, hey, you with your big ideas, who do you think you are? So remember this, sometimes the pitch that we have has to be a discovery process where together you and the prospect discover that they need your product or service, as opposed to you pitching a big idea and they just get overwhelmed with the idea and can't make a decision. So these messages from childhood, think about how both of them are holding you back. So again, this get to the point, sometimes they're thinking, don't sign anything. Remember, they thought, don't sign anything. So sometimes when we push people to sign a contract, their head trash is, boy, I've got to read this over. We're taught, don't challenge people. Again, they're thinking, get back to the point. People like us don't do that. Again, they're thinking that other one, be quiet, it's best to keep silence. Be polite. They're thinking, let somebody else talk. So remember, we got these adverse messages from childhood going on for between both of us when we're having conversations. You should be thinking and getting in the head of the prospect. What is the prospect thinking about what you have said or what you are going to do? How are they perceiving it instead of how you think that they should perceive it? Get into their head and just start thinking about, one of the ones I want to get to is in the pain step. You were taught, don't cause pain, don't hurt others. They're taught, don't show weakness, don't cause pain. In the pain step, what you have to remember is you're not causing the pain. Pain's already there. You're just asking questions that bring the pain to the surface. How many of you remember, any of you remember when I did the can, where I take a can and I smash my finger on it? Leah, were you for that one, or Troy, any of you? No? Anybody see that? Have I done that for you guys? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that my point is, on that one, I can take a can and I can just put my finger on a table and take a aluminum can and smash my finger. It doesn't hurt because of the way it goes around it. So a lot of people, when I ask them, hey, here, you do it. Go take the can and smash my finger with it. They won't do it because you're taught, don't cause pain. Even though I'm telling you it won't hurt, they don't want to do it. This is why a lot of people abandon the pain step too soon. Salespeople get out of the pain step because their mind, their head trash is, don't cause pain. You need to get pain. No pain, no sale. Sometimes salespeople wimp out of the pain step, rush right into budget, and then they don't get the budget from the client. Then they don't get the number because they didn't spend enough time in the pain step, because again, conditioning from childhood is don't cause pain. You don't ask enough questions because somewhere along the parents said, you know, why do you ask so many questions? Go look it up. Go to the encyclopedia, go to the internet, whatever it is. Who asked you? Why do you ask so many questions? Just think about these things that hold you back because it's head trash from your parents and things that they told you to do or not do. And how does that hold you back in your life? So again, these are just some of the other ones that I'm going to give you the solutions of this in each one of these steps. They're pretty much similar. You were taught pitch, pitch, pitch. They're thought don't think it over. These are all these things that hold us back. So the last slide is what I want you to think about is this. As I told you when I started, make a list of what you think is holding you back. And this is only for yourself. You don't need to share it with others unless it's your accountability partner. But then put the things that you think are holding you back in categories. Things that you can control, things that you have absolutely no control over, and only work on the things that you can control. Many times when I've had people do this exercise, their list is long of things that only the management can control, maybe only the prospects control, and they spend too much emotional energy thinking about things they have absolutely no control over. But make a list of things that you believe are holding you back from doing whatever the behavior is. What holds you back from making the phone calls? Boy, I don't have enough time. Okay, why is that? You have the time, you just choose to do something else with it. What's holding me back is to go walk and talk. Why? Why are you held back from going in and just cold calling, walking and talk? Gee, I'm afraid they're going to reject me. You know, that's why I do the when I came up with the cards. When I do a walk and talk, I already have a lead printed on a 3x5 card, and I walk in and I'll say, "Hey, do you know where this place is?" So they don't reject me. They want to give me directions. Oh, that's there next door. You're just about, you know, didn't go one store over. Oh, great. Hey, who's your marketing director? And it gives me a reason to go talk because I felt that just cold calling was bothering people, was an invasive. It was just too much in their face, and I was holding me back until I figured out a system on how to go in there and play lost. So the idea is what's holding you back from the behaviors you need to do to achieve your goals. If you do not make a list of them, you're out there every single week just fighting all these unknowns that hold you back and you don't get in the right frame of mind. So that's the last slide. Brian, what do you want to add to my comments? Or anybody?
Well, let anybody else go first. I'll go last. Anybody else have any comments? Question, I guess, you know, you talked about how, you know, I think sometimes when we go and have these conversations with people, how we relay what you just described there to a client. We know what we know about our business. Our client does not. And I think the process you're describing has us slow down and start communicating in a way by asking questions and working through that process to pull that information out of what the client knows for pain or may not even know, and just slow that down. And we've talked about that before, but again, I think it's something that needs to be reiterated as we have conversations with people and we're assuming they know what we know, and it just falls on deaf ears and it doesn't go anywhere. So adjusting that by market, by person that you're talking to, whether on a disc profile, all those types of things matter when you're having a conversation with somebody. And so that you have the best opportunity to build that rapport, build that communication, and get to those pain points and do those types of things. So I think what I guess I want everybody taken away from today and understanding is this stuff matters. You know, I think the phrase is, I don't need to get any better, is a bunch of crap. I think people need to understand is that you aren't better. If you're not thinking about it, you're not analyzing what you did today, how you looked at what your performance was today. Did I follow the processes? Because I do it every time. And I look at it and there's days I'm going, I should have done this better, that better. Everybody needs to look at that and take what we talked about today and other things and evaluate that so we grow. And that's what it's all about. When you grow, then your sales are going to grow and then the dollars grow. So
here-
a little bit of a
Here's
little
a
bit of a
technique.
soapbox.
Yeah, here's a
Huh?
technique I'd like you all to try today. When you meet or have a conversation with somebody, lead with, hey, do you mind if I share with you my biggest fear? And my biggest fear is that we're going to get into this and it's going to be outside your budget. My biggest fear is this wasn't a line item in your budget already, you're going to tell me that you have to wait till next year. Whatever it is, lead with what you think is going to hold you back from getting the sale. You'd be surprised how people help you overcome that. So again, it's, do you mind if I share with you my biggest fear? And then say to them, hey, what's your biggest fear? As you go through this process of trying to identify a sign company that you want to work with, you mind sharing with me what is the biggest fear that you go through when you're thinking about this right now? Those two statements right now can help overcome any of the roadblocks that might hold you back, because you get to have a conversation about what your fears are. You show a little vulnerability, but then they get to share what their fears are so that you can talk about why Graphic House might be the company to help them overcome. So try that today. Use that exact phrase. Do you mind if I share with you my biggest fear? My biggest fear is blah, 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 blah. Do you mind sharing with me what your biggest fear is as you go through? It's, for example, if you're meeting with, I do a lot of training with homeowners, builders. If you're working with a home owner and you're sitting over their kitchen table having a conversation with them about, remodeling their kitchen, and the person has no idea what it costs to remodel their kitchen, the salespeople have learned from me that tactic. Hey, as you start this process and you go through trying to hire a contractor to remodel your kitchen, you mind sharing with me what your biggest fear is? And the answer to that typically is, my biggest fear is I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what is, when somebody says this is a load bearing wall, I need to remove it. I need to spend $4,000 to tuck this rafter up into I don't know the structure. So a lot of owners will say, this is my biggest fear. Great. Now we know what their fear is, that they don't know how to pick a contractor. They other than price, they need to understand things. Well, once they share that fear with her, then well, how can we help you overcome that? What do we need to talk to you about? What is that we need to have a conversation about that would make you feel better about choosing us as a contractor? I believe that same tactic can be applied to you guys. And if anybody's done it, great. I'd like to hear the story. But if you haven't done it, today would be a great day to try that technique, because it does help you find out sooner rather than later what might hold you back from getting the sale. So try, again, we give you a lot of information. Don't try and eat the elephant all at once. Take one or two things out of each one of these trainings and then implement it today. If you don't take a sales technique that we teach you and do it within 48 hours, you will lose it and probably never, ever do it. So I challenge you to try that technique as soon as you can with the next conversation you have with the prospect, either over the phone or face to face. And then I'd like you to report back to me what, when we have our conversation next week, how that went when you did that during this week. So I'm saying Brian's writing it down. We're going to hold people accountable next week. I want to see if you tried this technique and hear what some of the answers were when you say, can I share with you my biggest fear? Will you share with me what your biggest fear is? Okay. Anybody else?
Nope.
Okay.
Wayne, can you stay on a second with me, please?
Of course.
Thank you. Everybody have
All
a
right,
great day.
everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Wayne.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.
Everybody's off. I'm going to stop. I got to
can't
stop
see.
recording.